Welcome to episode 1 of the Operation Amazon podcast. Today, we are sitting down with Corey Ganim of the Wholesale Network. He has done over $14 million in lifetime sales on Amazon, and not only that, he's actually coached over 1,000 students. We had a great conversation with him. There is a lot to learn. Enjoy.
But that's what we were talking the other day, was like when we were making burgers, we had avocados, lettuce, onion, tomato, like everything piled on the burger. And my plate, like as soon as I bit into the burger, everything was just all over the place. Yeah. It was just complete, like a mess.
Falls apart.
And I'm looking at his burger, I'm like, how'd you keep it so neat?
It's immaculate.
Yeah. It was like, it's a good representation of like our personality.
Yin and yang, yeah.
That's the thing, is like, I see you, Corey, talk a lot about how you're an early riser. And I can relate to that very much so. I'm an early riser. I get my energy during the morning. And as the day goes on, I'm like 4 or 5 o'clock, I'm pretty much done for the day.
I'm done by like toast by like 2.
Yeah. I mean, he's the exact opposite though.
Yeah.
He's a night owl.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good partnership. I mean, you want to have people, I mean, not necessarily, you don't have to be opposite in everything, but obviously you guys, your skill sets specifically complement each other really well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, for anybody watching, Corey Ganim, tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did it all start in the Amazon space, right? Like, take us back from the beginning, kind of walk us through to how you are where you are today.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, going way back, right? So growing up, I was always entrepreneurially inclined, for lack of a better term. So growing up, I would just go door to door selling stuff to the neighbors. It got to the point where like some of my neighbors, when I knock on the door, they'd answer and be like, all right, like, what am I buying today? Like, what are you selling? So it was always, had a sales mindset, always had an entrepreneurial streak. And it wasn't until it was actually senior year of college. So it was about January of senior year of college. I'm studying abroad in Vietnam, actually, which is really cool. And I'm sitting around on YouTube because I'm looking for things to do. I had about a 2-month gap between when I was graduating college and when I was going to move to Chicago for a full-time job. And, me, like you guys, I'm sure, it's hard for me to sit still. I can't just like chill for 2 months. So here I am on YouTube, laying in a hotel room in Vietnam, being like, what can I do to make money online in these 2 months that I have? And I stumbled upon a video from Reezy Resells, who obviously we were with them today at the conference this weekend. And he starts talking about he's going to these thrift stores and scanning these books using this app, and it's telling him how much he can sell them on Amazon for. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, I didn't even know you could sell stuff on Amazon. Like, I had sold a lot of stuff on eBay just over the years kind of for fun, but I thought everything I bought on Amazon I was buying from Jeff Bezos. And I think in 2025, it's crazy. Some people still think that.
A lot of people think that.
Yeah, people don't even know it's an opportunity still, as big as it's gotten. So, to make a long story short, I ended up graduating from college May 20th of 2017. May 22nd, I drove around to every thrift store in my town in Greensboro, North Carolina, and just started scanning books, just walking into thrift stores, scanning these books with the Amazon Seller app. And the first one I bought was a C++ coding textbook. It was probably from the 90s. It was like an ancient book.
Those make money.
Yeah, they do.
I did books, so I can get into that a little bit. But yeah.
Coding books in particular. It's almost like the more, and Reezy said this early on, which is kind of what made me think that this particular book was a good opportunity. He was like, the more obscure the topic, typically the more profitable the book's going to be, right? Or maybe the rarer it's going to be. So that led me into doing, I sourced used books for that whole summer, moved out to Chicago, didn't have a car. So it was difficult for me. I couldn't really drive around to thrift stores. I didn't really have a means of transportation. So that's when I started getting into online arbitrage. And are you guys familiar? I know you're familiar, but did you guys ever use tactical arbitrage, that tool?
Yep.
So this was, I think, right around the time that TA was getting popular, kind of getting big. There was a big tactical arbitrage Facebook group. The founder was in it answering questions. So I started using that to source online arbitrage leads. And at one point, my little apartment in Chicago, I mean, you step into my room, you literally couldn't move. There was just boxes and, packaging, tape everywhere, and started selling stuff OA. Fast forward another year and a half, early 2019, found wholesale. And ever since then, I've just been doubling down on wholesale, buying. The first year was really spent contacting brands, doing outreach to brands. And then right around 2020, started working with more distributors. And ever since then, 14 million in lifetime sales. I've coached, I guess, over 1,100 people in the last 2 years, just over 2 years. And it's been great. It's opened up a lot of doors. I met a lot of cool people like you guys. and the journey continues.
We talk a lot about wholesale. There's kind of two avenues with wholesale, right? So buy from a distributor, sort of more so a transactional relationship, like you're buying products in bulk from the distributor. Your value to them is money, so giving them the more volume that you buy, the more margin you're going to have built in versus buying from a brand. In your business over the years, what have you kind of done 50-50, more so brands, more so distributors? What does that look like for you?
I'd say if you look over the whole, I guess, been doing wholesale for almost 6 years, it's probably 50-50 at the end of the day, right? The whole first year I was doing only brand outreach because that's really all I knew how to do. And then my beginning of my second year was beginning of 2020, which everyone knows is when COVID happened. And that was right around the time that I started pivoting somewhat to working with distributors. Because what I found, as I'm sure you guys know, that the sales cycle for these brands can be really long, right? Like the first, I think, brand direct account that I closed took me probably 2 to 3 months of follow-up to really get to that first purchase order. And this was a business that I was trying to make work soon. I'm like, dude, I want to quit my job like ASAP. So, a 2, 3, 6, 12-month sales cycle wasn't really going to cut it. And yeah, so early 2020 started working with distributors. I'd say lifetime, it's probably 50-50.
Yeah. We were talking about this the other day. One of the influences at the beginning for us was actually Dylan from Aura.
Yep.
Because Dylan was putting out brand direct stuff. And if we had kind of looked at a different influence, I think that we would have maybe started with distributors or something. You don't hear a lot of people that say we started with brand direct because it's just a different game.
Yep.
Did you have influences that what pushed you to start reaching out to brands? Because that's not the path.
Same Dylan. Yeah, because when I found wholesale, so I found wholesale through Larry Labarsky, Watch Me Amazon.
Yeah.
He was putting out content more so, it was more like higher level. It wasn't like tactical, like this is what you say, this is what you do. But I learned a lot from him. That's what kind of turned me onto the model. But then through him, I found Dylan. And just like you said, Dylan was getting tactical in the weeds. Hey, this is how you do brand direct outreach. This is how you work with those brands. And probably just because it was the only thing I knew at the time, and he made it very simple to digest. I was like, oh, this is the route that I'll take. But it wasn't until, like we said, a few months into the trenches, you're like, oh, this actually takes longer than expected, as most good things usually do.
It's funny. It's not common. We don't, there's not a lot of people that start out that way. It's usually a distributor. I mean, maybe the landscape is different now.
I think nowadays, yeah, because there's just so much more information today than there was back in, this was 2019. But I think that is kind of shifting, right? As you guys know, Amazon as a platform is really pushing you to work directly with brand, either be the brand or be an authorized representative of the brand. That's not to say we don't still buy from distributors. We do all the time. But for the safest business model, for the most longevity, and probably for the highest margins as well, you're going to want to work directly with the brands, as you guys know.
You said something that I kind of honed in on, which is, and I want to speak to that a little bit because this is very much relatable to a newer seller. And a newer seller who maybe gets into wholesale, specifically brand direct wholesale, in that you said that I got to make money quickly, right? And I think that, it's a little bit of a different mindset that the newer seller has to adopt and really understand that this is a long-term game and you do have to delay gratification for a little bit of time. How have you integrated that in some of the people you've coached? How have you integrated that in your own business and kind of cultivated that for your community?
Yeah, so for me personally, I've always just been a delayed gratification person. I don't know if I think it maybe just is, it's one of those what is the nature versus nurture kind of argument. I think it's just kind of how I am. So I feel like I have the ability to just prolong gratification and just play longer term games. But at least for the people that I coach and for the way that I teach it, I try to just make it very clear, almost to my detriment, where I'm like, hey, if you're trying to make money in the next even 6 months, don't even forget about it.
We
right?
do that too.
Yeah, it's of course you're gonna make money within 6 months if you're doing what we say, but you're not gonna make real money until maybe even 6 years, right? So it's just I think instilling that mindset and just setting those expectations from the start. But if people do want to get those quick wins working directly with brands, it's hey, don't go target a brand that's doing $500K a month. Go target a brand that's doing $5K a month and help them get to $10K. Because in terms of real numbers, that's not much. $10K in revenue, you're maybe making $1,000 a month in profit, if that. But you doubled the brand on Amazon, taking them from $5K to $10K, and you get enough of those you get 10 of those brands under your belt, you're making $10K a month. and you're doing the brand a huge service. You're helping them grow when in reality they had no idea what they were doing.
Right. It's a good point. I think a lot of people, they struggle with delayed gratification. I think we're both very much so in the mindset of delayed gratification like yourself. But you see nowadays just so much information. In the Amazon space, you see a lot of, flashy things, right? People trying to sell you stuff and with shiny objects, but it's like, when you take the opposite approach and go into it with, we're going to focus in on the real business, doubling down on what it actually takes. You know what I mean? I think that's very refreshing to see.
Right. Well, and that's what I really respect. I mean, respect multiple things about you guys, but one thing I really like about you guys and what you're doing is that how often do we see people put out content and they start to get traction and they build a little bit of a following, and then, within 60 days it's, hey, buy my coaching, or hey, buy my course. Right, but you guys, I mean, how long have you been making content at this point? Over a year, right?
Yeah, I mean,
well over a year.
Even beyond that, like before, I've been making YouTube videos for a couple of years, 2-3 years, and it's funny because I never really had a plan to monetize. I just genuinely enjoy speaking about the information, and talking about what we're doing and teaching and providing real valuable information to people, because at the end of the day, it is a business, and I think, unfortunately, because of a lot of the nonsense with like the flashy and shiny object things, like it's become a little bit of a convoluted space. So it's like presenting, hey, here's the real information. Here's what it actually takes to grow a business. Yes, you can make a lot of money. Yes, you can get rich doing it, but it's going to take time. It's going to take effort.
Kind of the direction that I was going with that is, one thing, again, I respect about you guys is you put out content for, multiple years, and still, I guess, probably as of this recording, haven't actually truly monetized. There's no coaching offer, there's no course offer, at least that I'm aware of. And you just don't see many people that build that foundation for that long. And Alex Hormozy has a great quote where he says something along the lines of, I think he says like the longer you wait to ask, the bigger the ask can be. So you guys, I know what you guys have in the works, and you're in a really good position to kind of cash in on the last 2 or 3 years of effort. Definitely.
We'll have, we have people that will reach out to us about things. But part of the thing for us is that whenever we do anything, like we talked to you about it when we were on the call the other day, Brad started a lead magnet, just for content to put out, and it turned into a 120-page book that is now illustrated with pictures, and and it's like, so whenever we do anything, we want to, just like with the wholesale business, go away from it understanding that there was nothing left in the tank.
Right.
And so we're trying to put out the highest quality that we can. And that goes from long-form YouTube videos, which we've started to focus on more and more to provide value there to someone that's listening and learning about wholesale, even to an info product and a course. Because if you're paying for something, or even if it's a free course, but you're paying me with your time to consume the information I'm putting out, I want to make sure that you're successful and able to gather what you need from that. So there's been a lot of background work, a lot of studying, a lot of understanding this process and how we want to approach it, and in the meantime just putting out value.
Well, it's super important too, because it sets the tone for how you conduct the rest of your business. Like if you kind of have that mindset of, hey, I'm not going to put out anything that's not high quality, even if it's free, right? Because I think a lot of people make the mistake of, oh, I'll put out this free course, but it's free, so I don't have to put a whole lot of time into it. But if somebody consumes that and they're like, it was okay, well then what is incentivizing them to buy your paid offer, right? Or what's incentivizing them to even give you more of their time, which at the end of the day is more valuable than money, right? So that can make the argument that the free stuff actually should, in a lot of cases, be just as high quality as the paid stuff.
I don't know if you're like this. I know Brad is like this to an extreme. I'm not as bad, but like when you get on one thing, you obsess over it, and like he's like that a lot, where it's like putting in all the effort and everything into that. And so that's been like, content's been a journey for us, because it's night and day from the Amazon business.
Yeah, totally different.
And like, it's in a good way, I guess. I mean, it's a change of pace, but getting other people to be successful, as you know, it's a challenge. It's different because you can't get into that person's head.
Right.
They either have to have that drive, and we always say, like, again, to almost a detriment, I'm like, don't pay for this.
Right.
If you're not going to execute and actually do the work and have the mindset coming into it that I am not, or Brad is not, or you are not going to make that person successful. The only thing you're going to do, or we're going to do, is fast track their success and provide them with opportunities. If they do nothing and pay you, there's going to be no business built, no success built, and no sustainability.
Exactly. I mean, that's one of the reasons why with our coaching, we don't take brand new Amazon sellers. Like if you don't have an Amazon seller account or you've never sold on the platform, even if you have the money and you want to join, we will not take your money. And partially because it's way easier to get someone from, say, 1 to 10 than it is to get them from 0 to 1. And because a lot of people who say they want to get in the game, they don't know how hard it is. They don't really know what it takes. And if they haven't made that commitment to even set up a seller account or, to get into online arbitrage to start, that's not a person who's shown me they're serious enough yet for me to even take their money and then coach them. That's kind of my 2 cents on that perspective. I know a lot of people do it different, but it also makes it easier on us, right? Because we're dealing with people who are more committed and they do have somewhat of a track record and a foundation.
Let's switch gears a little bit and kind of get into the weeds a little bit. So we talked before about distributors versus brands, right? Mm-hmm. 2 offshoot models of Amazon wholesale, both similar approaches, different approaches. We do mostly brand direct wholesale. You have a lot of experience with brand direct wholesale. I want to kind of focus there. Mm-hmm. So with brand direct, we all know that 90% of brands are going to reject you on the phone.
Yep.
Brands
99
don't
probably.
99.
Yeah.
90 is generous.
Yeah.
Brands don't want to work with Amazon sellers. How do you position the conversation early on? Set the tone, set the frame to put yourself in a position to actually close an account that 90% of people can't ever even think about closing.
I think the key is you just got to get out in front of the Amazon seller question, because any good brand that is doing well on Amazon, you're not going to be the first person to have identified that brand. So when you call them on the phone, because if you email them, then your chances are 0. So when you're talking to them on the phone, they're going to ask, where do you sell? They're going to ask what kind of business you run. And a lot of times I will lead with the fact that we sell on Amazon. I say, hey, we're an e-commerce company. We've got our own website, which we do. We've also got a really big presence on Amazon. We've been there for 8 years, right? And I'll get up right out in front and say that. And, most of the time they'll say, oh, well, that's great, but you can sell it on your website, but you can't sell it on Amazon. And then from there, it's just asking questions, right? Never would I want to tell them why it is that they should allow me to become an authorized seller. I want to tell them by asking questions. Well, why is that? Your chances are you probably dealt with some sellers who were a pain in your back, right? Or who wasted your time, or who you opened an account for and didn't end up spending any money. Does that sound about right? And when they start to tell you why they don't like Amazon sellers, then it becomes a much easier conversation, because when they're venting, they're thinking subconsciously, they're like, oh, this guy actually gets it. He's the 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000 who actually has a business and isn't just some guy trying to make a quick buck. He's trying to build a relationship.
Quite literally could have been we could have wrote what you just said.
Yeah.
It's exactly what we do.
Right.
Yeah, and something that's like we've kind of honed in on this process, right? It's a very specific process. When we get on the phone, we try to take the path of least resistance and, just get the price, let's get our foot in the door kind of thing, and then maybe pitch exclusivity later on. Mm-hmm. Something that you said is you come right out and say Amazon. And I think that's very important, is being open, honest, and transparent up front, because a lot of people can and will start the relationship with a lie. Mm-hmm. And say, we have a brick and mortar store. They don't have a brick and mortar store. Right. We have our own website that we sell products on. They don't have a website. Right.
And we used to do that a long time ago, because it was like you didn't know.
Right.
And you thought, you're like, all right, well, I'm going to avoid the resistance and the pushback. I'm going to get the yes. Mm-hmm. But in reality, the yes is usually a no, and the no is usually a yes. Right. So it's like now we're almost pushing for the no, as you said. I was saying to somebody else earlier today at the conference that, like, a couple of weeks ago, I called him all excited, and I was like, I had the best conversation with a brand. The guy hung up on me. He rejected me. He hung up the phone. He was like, no, absolutely not. You can't sell products on Amazon. Yeah. But it was in the tonality and the questions and everything you're talking about. That's why that's exciting.
Right.
And like Brad said, starting it off on a truth rather than a lie, you're just setting yourself up for a failure. But sometimes it's scary. Mm-hmm. It's like, you're trying to get over that courage It's like, I forget what it's called, but if you go to do like a presentation or something and you're nervous about public speaking, the most nervous you're going to be, it's like an arc.
Right.
So the most nervous you're going to be is right before you present.
Yep.
And then when you start, the arc goes like this. And
Exactly.
they test it by like levels in your body, whatever, your emotions, things like that. And it's the same thing. It's like you're really scared to get that rejection, but once you get it, you're like, all right, how can I now figure out how to counter that?
For my presentation yesterday, right? I mean, it wasn't a big room by any means. And I enjoy public speaking. I'm not, I feel like I'm decent at it, but it's like the whole day I'm fine, not really thinking about it. And about an hour before, you start to get the butterflies a little bit. And it's like right before you go up, you're just like, you kind of have that knot in your stomach. And then as soon as you start talking, it's just like, whatever. It's just these people they want you to succeed. They want you to do fine. And then you forget about it. It's the same thing when you talk to a brand owner on the phone. In fact, getting that no a lot of times feels good because you're like, oh, well, actually, that wasn't nearly as bad as I thought. And then it's that much easier to then make the next call or to even follow up with them, right? Because the first no is usually not going to be as harsh as the second one. And by the fourth, fifth, or sixth one, sometimes it's a yes, or sometimes it's a, well, hey, not right now, but try again in 3 months, right? So the no's get softer over time, I guess is a good way to say it.
One of the biggest things is like emails versus calls, right? Especially with brands. How many times we've gotten a no by email, and then you call the brand, and all of a sudden the conversation is developing, and now it seems like it might be a yes.
Yep.
You can't, and this is what I say to people, who are maybe hesitant to get on the phone, pick up the phone and call these brands or distributors. It's like, when you send an email, there is zero tonality to it. You can't hear how they sound. So I always say, when we start a conversation with the brand and we ask them that first question about what's their e-commerce strategy, how are they handling, how's that been for you, just like you pointed out, you get an answer that is based on sort of a spectrum of tonality.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, we'll take you on as a seller, we'll work with you, no problem, right? All right, great. Add it to the bucket.
Yep.
Then it's like, no, like absolutely not. We're not taking, brick and mortar store, licensed physician kind of thing.
Yep.
But somewhere in the middle, like between no and like the middle area is where we found the sweet spot with our brands. How important is it to actually pick up the phone and make calls to these brands?
It's critical. And so, some people, I guess let me put it this way, right? So I think during the 60K and 60 Days from Scratch series that I recorded, one of the interactions was I sent an email for my opening, that was my opening interaction with them. I didn't make the call. And then I got an email back that said, no, sorry, no, no e-commerce. And even in the video I said, I'm like, these are the worst calls to make. Like, I still don't even feel comfortable making these calls where they said no over email, but then you try to get them on the phone and change their mind because you already got the no. And what's worse than a single rejection is a double rejection. But just like you said, like, I can't tell you how many times in the past I have made that call after getting the no via email, and then you talk to the person that told you no via email on the phone, and it's a whole different story. I've talked to brand owners or salespeople that, again, they rejected me over email, but you talk to them on the phone, and they're like, oh, yeah, well, our default response is no. Like, my boss just says to tell everybody no that emails us, but, you seem like a good guy, so, yeah, we can take you on. And it's like...
There's a human element to it.
Yeah,
Like, you're
it's like
humanizing
literally...
yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's like, think about, the keyboard warrior that's out there on Twitter that's going to, talk garbage to you all day long, but then they meet you in person and you're the nicest person ever.
Yeah.
It's like the same type of logic, I guess, in addition to the tonality. It's like sometimes you just call, you humanize yourself. And I always I say this all the time with brands on the phone, is I say that my responsibility as an Amazon seller is to fix the bridge the last 3 sellers burned down for you.
I like that.
I say that all the time, and
really
because
like
it humanizes yourself as like, we're different. And picking up the phone is, how many, I don't know a percentage, but I would venture to say 90+% of sellers probably never pick up the phone, and then they're wondering why they don't get results from it. Your ladder is up the wrong wall.
Right. And this is what I tell people, whether it's in our community or just giving advice on social media. It's like, at the end of the day, you're just having a conversation with another human being, right? And it's not that serious. It's just selling on Amazon. Like, we're not negotiating like a merger or acquisition, right? Like, it's not that big a deal.
Sometimes it feels like that, though.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like it. A lot of times what I tell people too, right, is, hey, when you're making these calls, record the call, and I will give you feedback. I will critique the call for you, right? And I've told our community that for the last, year and a half. I was like, I will do that for any of you guys. 20-minute call, 30-minute call, I don't care because I enjoy doing that. And of the 160 people we have, there's been 2 people to take me up on that in the last year and a half. But the 2 that did, we recorded it. We made it a learning experience for the whole community, and everybody gets so much value out of that. So I'm like, guys, why are you not doing more of this? Right? It doesn't even take any fancy equipment. Just use like OBS or something for on your computer. And I think that's the best way to learn. I mean, even for me, I've put out YouTube videos where either it's one of my cold calls and I will like live critique it, or it's just a straight cold call and then I'll watch it back. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, why did I say that? Or should have said this differently, or I should have stopped talking here and just let them talk. So you learn so much from critiquing your own calls that are just conversations with other people at the end of the day.
The biggest thing in all of this for us is that like we reach out to brands at this point in the game, not a lot of times because we have to, but because we enjoy it. Right? We enjoy building relationships, and relationships are the foundation of any business model.
Yep.
Right. But like, maybe you could speak a little bit to the importance of relationships in wholesale and your business, and how that's, really cultivated you as a business owner.
Yeah, so I'll give you a good example. Our best brand direct account, right, is Berkey Filters, and I've talked about them publicly at length before. They're a huge brand. They have an incredibly loyal customer base, and they took me 3.5 years of follow-up to land. So they were one of the first brands I reached out to when I started wholesale in 2019. And I get a hold of somebody named Becky, and Becky tells me, she says, "Hey, Corey, no new dealers right now." And I said, "Okay, no problem. Well, can I follow up once a month or so just to check in?" And she's like, "Nope, no more than once a quarter. Once a quarter max." I said, "No problem." So call her once a quarter, every quarter for the next, 16 or almost like 14 quarters. And it got to the point where after 2 years, it was a joke every time I called. I'm like, "Hey, me again." She's like, "Oh yeah, hey, how you doing?" She's like, "Yeah, no space now." But so it was kind of like building that rapport, building that relationship with her just from like a 5-minute phone call once every 3 months. I guess my point in saying that is, relationship building, rapport building doesn't need to be you flying to the headquarters to sit down and have lunch with them, right? Sometimes it's as simple as a text message check-in or a 5-minute phone call, or something that my buddy Philip does. He's a $1 million a month seller. He will buy pizza for the whole office for his best suppliers, right? So when it comes time to process his orders, he doesn't even have to ask them. They just prioritize his orders. They'll push him through first, right? And then back to Berkey. So now that we work with them, our sales rep, her name's Haley, she's on maternity leave right now, and we're sending her, not only her, we're sending her a gift, we're sending her newborn a gift, we're sending her husband a gift, and we did that at Christmas as well, to the tune of like a $400 or $500 gift. And, she emailed me right away, and she called me, and she was so happy, she was so gracious, and, she loves us for it. She's told me, she's like, you guys are our favorite account. And it's just from doing simple things that cost a little bit of money, not much, and takes 5 minutes of your time, but most people just don't do it.
There's an intangible return on that.
Yeah.
And it's not only like we were actually listening to a presentation about a year ago, a little more than that, on the company Chewy, that dog, cat stuff, right? And they take that to like an extreme.
Yeah.
Where, I don't know.
When your dog dies or something, they'll send you
They'll
like
do that, but there was an older woman living in an apartment complex, and she ordered a big bag of dog food and couldn't get the thing up. So she called Chewy customer service, and Chewy couldn't get someone out there to do it. So they called a local pizza place in the area and said, "Can you go and do this?" And the guy was like, "We can't do that. We have nothing to do with that." They said, "If we order a pizza and deliver it to our apartment, will you carry the bag up?" And they were like, "Sure."
Right.
And so they went, they did that. They're just taking relationship building, because that woman will never forget that.
Right.
And the fact that I'm sitting here telling you, talking about it, like the impact that has. And so doing stuff like that for your suppliers, and things that are personable, I've always been a huge advocate of doing that.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
It's intangible how much reward you can get from it, and there's a little elements of me where I'm like, I get to be a good person.
Yep. And they're not dumb too. Like, they know that anybody catches wind of that, it's going viral. So they know that's a PR play, but also it's the right thing to do. So on, worst case scenario, you have a customer for life. Best case scenario, you get a ton of good press out of it. And one thing that's really underrated is sending handwritten notes to your suppliers or your sales reps or just anybody, just people in general. And this is something when I used to have, I had it for like 10 years. I would convert old VHS tapes to DVDs. It's kind of my side hustle. I was doing it up until even 3 years ago. And it was all referral based. It was all just word of mouth over the course of multiple years. And every time what I would do is when I would finish the job, I would bring their tapes back to them. So that was kind of my pitch. I say, hey, I'll come to you. I'll pick your stuff up. I'll take it home. I'll convert it. And I'll bring it right back to you, kind of like white glove service. And in the box, which had our branding, our logo on it, inside the box is just a handwritten note like, hey, thank you so much for your business. Appreciate it. If there's anybody else that you think would be a good fit, let me know, from Corey, right? And I mean, I can't equate that. I can't put an ROI on that, but I'm sure that some referrals came from it. And at the very least, people just are like, oh, that's a nice gesture. I haven't gotten when's the last time we got a handwritten note, right? So again, worst case, you have a really happy customer. Best case, you get some good PR. You make some more, money from it from more customers.
If you're going to send a handwritten note to, I don't know, UNFI,
probably not be able to make it to your sales rep.
But it's like, that just goes to show you, like, sometimes within that brand direct model, like, there is more personality.
Yeah.
There's more room for personality and different things. And so I think those that have the ability to tap into that, if you're an extrovert, if you're someone that enjoys relationships and talking to people, I think you're going to be a lot more inclined to work in the brand direct model. If you don't you're deciding between distributors and brand direct versus a distributor, a lot of times it's more money based. Yep. It's less, I guess it's still relationship with reps, but it's a little different because the distributor, at the end of the day, their job is to sell and distribute as much product as they can to the right people.
Yep.
They're not really interested in growing the brand intrinsically.
Yep.
They're interested in moving product. So it's kind of different. So like you can't really pitch to them to ask them why they're not accepting Amazon sellers type of deal.
Right.
In the same way that you could to a brand.
Well, and a lot of times the reason distributors can't take more Amazon sellers is because the brands tell them not to. Their hands are tied. They're like, listen, if we bring you on, we're going to lose the Nestle account or we're going to lose the XYZ account. And let's be honest, that's worth a lot more to them than us spending, $5, $10K a month or whatever that might be. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the closer you can get to the brand, the better. The more personable you can be, the stronger that relationship you can build. I mean, all of it kind of goes hand in hand, and it is a really good model. And in my opinion, the best way to sell on Amazon by far in 2025 and beyond, because it blends the best parts of wholesale and arbitrage with the best parts of private label, and it gets rid of the worst part of private label, which is building the brand from scratch and marketing and all the uncertainty that comes with launching a brand new brand that nobody knows about. The demand's built in. You've just got to know a little bit about marketing on Amazon, or better yet, you partner with somebody who does, and then you're essentially a sales and marketing company at that point, and a number data crunching company, and making sure that you're optimizing your costs, really.
So Amazon wholesale, right? It's a great business. It's super scalable. It's at the end of the day, it's kind of a reselling model, right? So you're selling other people's products. So to me, it's more of a long-term cash play rather than building like exit value in a company. Mm-hmm. So you scale your wholesale business, right? Maybe a new seller gets into wholesale, they scale their business up, they're making, good money from their wholesale business. You're very vocal on social media about different investment vehicles and kind of how you invest your money. Beyond just the Amazon business itself, maybe for somebody looking to get into additional investments, like what would you say in regard to that?
Yeah, so personal finance is definitely something I'm interested in. I can just talk about what I'm doing because I'm not
a financial
qualified
advisor.
to give investment advice. But I mean, listen, at the end of the day, what I'm doing now is I've been buying $20 a day of Bitcoin for the last, 4 or 5 months. I buy basically a total market S&P index fund every week through Vanguard, but that's set up automatically. So every week, I don't even know how much I have set up to do it, maybe $100 or $200 a week, goes straight into this index fund. Don't have to touch it, and it's been doing that for 2.5 years now. So Bitcoin index funds. I am looking to get more into real estate and acquiring my first rental property. And recently I have lent some of my own money to others and invested in some commercial real estate syndication projects. But at the end of the day, I just want to spread my money around. What I don't want to do is have, which is the position I was in, a year or two ago, is have my whole net worth tied up in, Fiji water or like Hydro Flask water bottles or something at Amazon. And then God forbid something happens with my account and then I'm completely wiped out. Right. So I'm just trying to avoid any sort of catastrophic exposure, which I think starting to take some chips off the table at a certain point and investing those makes a lot more sense.
Right, and that's what, like, we were having this conversation just before, which is that with Amazon wholesale, really any inventory-based business, it's very easy to continue that cycle and just take all your profits, reinvest back into the business, then leverage up, and now all of a sudden you're operating on a negative cash flow because not only are you reinvesting 100% of your profits back into your business, but you're also now taking on debt, right,
Yep.
in your business, which debt is a great vehicle. We have plenty of debt, but it's a matter of, really understanding your numbers,
Right.
So it's like profit is very different than cash flow.
Yep.
So I think it's very important as a seller scales to understand that, like, pay yourself. You got to pay yourself in this business.
Sometimes it's a hard thing too, because like if you are entrepreneurial and you're driven and you start to get success, it is actually difficult to take your foot off the gas pedal.
Yep.
It's a hard thing to come to terms with mentally.
Totally.
It's just because you see something working, but the commonality of my sales are going up, I'm closing more accounts, I know we're making money. Where is it?
Right. Well, and there's a great quote. It's like profitable businesses go bankrupt all the time, right? Just because they're profitable doesn't mean it's cash flow is everything. Just because you're profitable doesn't mean you have positive cash flow. And you could have all the profit in the world, but if your cash flow sucks, and you're going to go bankrupt. And that's been, so you're talking about like knowing when to take your foot off the gas and that being really difficult. I mean, that's been a big struggle of mine really over the last year in particular. So 3 weeks from today, I think will be 8 years that I've been selling on Amazon. And I feel like at this point, almost like part of my identity as an Amazon seller, which kind of sucks because we always talk shit about Amazon sellers, but that's kind of how it is. And, but at the same time, it's like, I do need to take like de-risk in some way, right? I need to take some sort of money off the table because I can't afford for my account to go down, or
especially because that's the biggest thing. It's like third-party platform risk.
Right.
It's like, it's one thing if you own the brand, right? Because now you probably are operating across multiple different platforms. Maybe you have a distribution network and you have the intellectual property, you own the IP and everything. But with wholesale and reselling, it's great, very scalable, but at the end of the day, you don't own that IP. So it's like, if you have 90 or even 100% of your inventory at Amazon, by doing brand direct, you're de-risking yourself tenfold compared to doing like arbitrage or buying from distributors.
Right.
So that being said, you're still exposing yourself to a certain element of, less control because the inventory, it's at Amazon's warehouse, and we all know Amazon shoots first and asks questions later.
Exactly.
So I think it's really mental discipline to say, all right, I'm gonna freaking pay myself.
Yeah.
Like I got to take some money off this business so that I'm not continuously just pouring everything back into it, because you could very easily, just like you said, profitable businesses go bankrupt all the time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's how, I think it was July of 2022. I had my best month ever, and one of my most profitable months ever. Best month ever in terms of revenue, and also one of my most profitable months. And then 2 months later, I'm like, dude, if I keep buying inventory, like, we are literally going to go bankrupt. Even though we were profitable, we just, we were over leveraged. We didn't have the best terms with our suppliers. So our cash flow was very poor, even though we were profitable on paper. And that was a really hard learning lesson, because I had to take probably 4 or 5 months of just almost buying nothing, selling through a lot of what we have, paying down debt, and then almost restarting from scratch at the beginning of 2023 in terms of just purchasing again, right? And as you guys know, that's once you kind of stop the purchasing train, you kill all your momentum, and it takes another 60 days just to build that momentum up again because of the lead times and because of FC transfers and everything that comes with that. So yeah, it's something that hopefully not everybody has to experience, but I think a lot of people will at some point.
No one talks about it.
Right.
which is the weirdest thing. We were saying this earlier today. Nobody talks about the cash flow strain,
Yep.
especially in a model like wholesale.
Right.
You know, no one talks about it. I don't know why.
I mean, it's not really a sexy side of the
Yeah.
business. You know,
Right.
everybody wants to talk about, finding new products and, orange bars, but like there's a lot of orange bars out there where you don't know what's going on behind closed doors.
Right.
So it's like sales are great, but I mean, I always say, we say it all the time, sales
Yeah,
are
you sat
are
in a
for
butcher,
vanity.
so.
Yeah.
Sales are for vanity, profit is for sanity, and cash is king.
I try and say it all the time,
so
and
it's
I
like-
screw them all up.
I know. I love
Say
that
it.
quote. I know. I've heard it. Yeah. I was actually about to say. If you didn't say that, I was going to say it.
That's one thing, especially as a new seller, like you really have to be careful with debt. Is like if you don't understand your numbers and then you put debt in the equation,
Yep.
it's kind of a recipe for disaster.
Total
We
disaster.
get desensitized though to like as being an Amazon seller, as you scale, it's absurd when you really think about it. It's normalize it so the normal person. And I've had conversations with people like, I got $1,500 on my credit card, like I got to get it paid down. I was like, we put $1,500 on a business dinner last night. Like,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like
There's been some massive Amazon companies that have gone just totally out of business.
Yeah.
insane.
I mean, the aggregators, think about Thrasio. They raised, I think it was $1 billion during COVID, or not during COVID, but during late 2020, early 2021. And within the last year filed for bankruptcy. Like you go from raising $1 billion 4 years ago to filing bankruptcy today, some things had to have gone catastrophically wrong. And there's just a lot of Amazon operators that just don't know what they're doing. A lot of guys get over leveraged. A lot of people go too deep on inventory. There's a million things that can go wrong at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, it's over leverage. It's a lot of these businesses, like, these massive companies are operating on razor thin margins. Like, we literally see it every day.
It's crazy.
Like, sellers we're competing against, it's like they're losing every sale. They're losing money.
It's
Gross margin. They're
unbelievable.
just losing
it's
money.
Like you're contacting a brand or distributor. You're getting the lowest pricing, or you're getting the bottom pricing anyone else is getting, and another company is losing money on the gross margin level. And I've stopped trying to figure out why or how they're doing it. We got theories, right? But it's unbelievable, and I don't understand how it's a sustainable thing, and it's never something that we would ever teach anybody to do because. You got to get real creative to make that kind of business work. But
So yeah, the only time I'm losing money on a listing is if I'm just liquidating it. I'm just like, you know what, I'm fine losing $1 or $2 per unit. I just want to get my money back and reinvest. But that said, I do have a theory that I've come up with over the years. It's like somebody's always getting a better price than you. Even if you're buying brand direct, even if the brand only sells directly to the retailers, sure, there are cases where the other seller, they either just don't know their numbers or they don't care. They are losing money. But I feel like the vast majority of the time, there's always somebody getting a better price. Whether they found it at liquidation, whether it was overstock, whether they bought a year's worth of supply to get an extra 10%. You never know. So I always operate under the assumption that maybe I have a good price, but I probably don't have the best price.
I'm talking like top 100 Amazon sellers though. Like I've had real conversations with brands, and they've gone to other sellers which are top 100 sellers, and they've said what would you like to price this product at? What's your ideal margin? And it was something like I had a conversation a couple months ago, and it was something like a 5% net margin on Amazon. And they were prepared to purchase a 12-month supply of inventory at a 5% margin.
They just want to turn and burn it.
And so I said to the brand, I said, is this something that you would do? And he was like, absolutely not. You know what I mean? So some of it just doesn't make sense. But yeah, there's obviously always someone getting a better price in some cases. But from our experience too, there's also just crazy illogical things that I just don't understand.
For sure. And so a couple more things to take into account too is 5% gross. They're probably putting that on a credit card, so they might be getting an extra 2%, 2.5%, so that brings them up to 7.5. But also some guys too. I know other big wholesale sellers who, if they're struggling with deal flow, they're buying stuff at break even just to keep their warehouse workers busy, right? Because you think about a lot of these big wholesale sellers that have these big warehouse operations. Some of them have 15, 20, 30, 40 warehouse employees. And if it's a slow month, they've got to keep them busy, or those people are going to go find other jobs. So they might buy something at 5%, or they might buy something at break even just to keep those guys busy for that month until the stuff picks back up. There's really, but we can never know at the end of the day. But I agree with you. I think it's a horrible idea. Like, it's not a good way to make money.
Cash flow?
Yeah, well, especially for the unpredictability, too. And it makes it very hard to scale. I mean, if you're only making a 5% margin, the capital required to really compound and to really grow is astronomical. And that you're just taking a huge risk at that point.
There's more efficient ways to build wealth with that amount of money.
Yeah. It's like go lend it at like 10%, secured by an asset.
Right.
I mean, there's no platform risk, And if they default, you just take the property. Like there's, in my opinion, better ways to do it.
It's amazing though, you see it all the time in these sellers. They're just, I mean, we've had theories. It's like they're leveraging it into other businesses, or they're borrowing against, the Amazon business for real estate, credit card points. But yeah, I mean, who went out of business? It's like Caspian.
PharmaPack. Oh, yeah. Did Caspian?
Caspian went out of business too. Yeah,
I didn't realize
we actually
that.
Work with a brand exclusively.
Yeah.
Nice.
We have a brand exclusive from who used to work with them. But it's just like amazing to me, because I think it's a combination of over leverage and razor thin margins,
right.
and then PharmaPacks, who tries to go public and IPO, and they're raising all this money, and it's like one false move,
right?
And you're operating on 2% margins. It's like one thing goes wrong, you're done.
Bringing it full circle, right? That's the stuff that you see. Mm-hmm. You see, just like we talk about social media, whether you're a new seller or whether you're doing 100 million a year, right? Like what you see on social media, what you see publicly is not always like the inner workings of the business,
right?
No matter what the business model is. And so understanding and knowing your numbers, we talk about it all the time, is huge. Because if you don't do that, you're not going to be able to scale and grow efficiently, even if you might think you are. In reality, you're just a couple of years away from going bankrupt.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, people just, the people that do share numbers, they're only going to share, like I'll fully admit I've shared my profit 2 or 3 times, but I'm not going to share profit for a bad month. Like obviously those are videos of, some of my good months. So at the end of the day, you're never going to see like the true picture, because nobody's just going to send you like a PDF of their P&L, right? That's really what it comes down to. So yeah, at the end of the day, you just it is kind of buyer beware if you're going to buy information, or when it comes to who you're going to pay attention to. But I think it's pretty easy to sniff out the BS and know who has been doing it for a while, who's being honest, and who's just not going to, take your money and run at the end of the day.
Know your numbers, compare yourself to you, and that's really all you can do at the end of the day. So
yeah.
So someone to find you, social media, like say, someone finds it valuable and wants to get in touch with you or your community, like how could they do that?
Yeah, so YouTube's going to be the best place by far. I'm just at Corey Ganim on YouTube. I do a podcast episode every Wednesday of the Corey Ganim Show on YouTube, and then a new video every Sunday. And up to this point, they've been 100% Amazon related, 100% Amazon wholesale related. So yeah, if you're looking to learn more about this model, it's probably a good place to go.
Cool. All right, Corey Ganim, it's a pleasure as always. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.